Have you ever got an infection before? What did your doctor prescribe? Did they take a sample to test for the presence of a specific bacteria? Or did they just prescribe you something based on the symptoms that you were experiencing? Antibiotics play an important role in the treatment of bacterial infections. One of the main concerns that you've likely heard of before is the emergence of antibiotic resistance. How much of a concern is this? How many different antibiotics are there? How do they work? Why would a doctor prescribe one antibiotic instead of another? Now, antibiotics target bacteria to disrupt their natural life cycle or kill them outright. While simpler than humans and most higher eukaryotes, bacteria themselves are still incredibly complex creatures. This complexity is in some sense their downfall, as if one component of bacteria is thrown out of whack, the whole bacterium is in jeopardy. To that end, antibiotics all work by targeting some function of a bacterium, differing primarily in their exact target within a bacterium. Furthermore, while antibiotics are a genuinely incredible form of medicine, they can also lead to a number of side effects. The potential and noteworthy side effects of these various antibiotics will of course be discussed, but should not be considered particularly common or guaranteed if you take these meds. They wouldn't be given as a medication if they were, after all. With that being said, let's take a look at our first antibiotic, and the one that started it all, penicillin. Penicillin initially referred to the antibacterial substance produced by Penicillium fungi in solution, but as further analysis was done on said substances, an exact class of molecules was discovered and described. Penicillin has this penam ring, which contains this beta-lactam ring. The penam ring includes both the dihydrothiazole as well as the beta-lactam ring, which is a four-membered ring, cyclic amide, which we call a lactam. It's called a beta-lactam because the nitrogen is connected to the beta position, hence, it's a beta-lactam. Penicillin was first discovered in 1928 by biologist Alexander Fleming due to an accidental contamination of a bacterial sample in his lab. Fleming was known to go on extended vacations all the time, so his colleagues lamented. A colony of Staphylococcus aureus was contaminated with Penicillium fungus, leading to the massive death of bacteria surrounding the fungus. Fleming published his discovery of penicillium's antibacterial properties, but didn't actually pursue further research with the fungus. However, in 1939, a research team headed by chemists Howard Florey and Ernst Chain began looking further into penicillium's antibacterial effect. Due to the World War going on at the moment, their group attracted ample funding, specifically to upscale penicillin production for medical use. Florey and Chain's efforts quickly bore fruit. Penicillin would first be used to treat illness in 1941 and see mass production by mid-decade. Penicillin was seen as a genuine wonder drug, and Fleming, Florey, and Chain would be given the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1945 for its development. Since then, the original penicillin treatments, along with a number of modern penicillin-based drugs, have saved countless lives, and the research field of antibiotics has become as important as it is robust. Penicillin, the class of molecules that is, works by affecting the formation of the bacterial cell wall. The beta-lactam ring of penicillin binds to and inactivates the bacterial proteins that assemble their cell wall. This prevents the formation of a proper cell wall and leads to the eventual lysis and cell death of affected bacteria. Penicillin itself is used to treat a variety of bacterial infections, ranging from simple throat infections to syphilis. While side effects of penicillin are uncommon, by virtue of being one of the first prominent antibiotics, said side effects are well known and well documented. So these were one of the first antibiotics, and they're quite effective. So for that reason, I'm going to put them into S tier, because they've saved a lot of lives. The next molecule that we have is cephalexin. Cephalexin is one of the most prominent medications in the cephalosporin class of antibiotics. Cephalosporins have a similar structure to the penicillins, except instead of having this 5-membered ring for the penam, they instead have this 6-membered ring, which still has a sulfur in it. Cephalosporins as a class are derived from the fungi genus Acremonium and get their name from the genus's previous name, Cephalosporium. Given the similar structure of cephalosporins and cephalexin to penicillins, you might think that they function in a similar manner, and you'd be right. The beta-lactam ring of cephalosporins binds to the same active sites of the same proteins as penicillin, again, interrupting cell wall formation and leading to bacterial cell death. Cephalexin itself is used to treat various infections and diseases, such as pneumonia, skin infections, and urinary tract infections, and is also one of the most highly prescribed medications in the world. Cephalexin side effects are mostly gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, for example. Actual allergic reactions to cephalexin are uncommon, and interestingly not strongly correlated with penicillin allergies, in spite of their similar structures. So this one has fewer allergies than penicillin. It's also saved a lot of lives. So for that reason, I think we're going to have to put it right into S tier, which is still appropriate because there's a sulfur in it. Next we have nitrofurantoin. Nitrofurantoin is a synthetic antibiotic and used primarily for the treatment of UTIs or urinary tract infections. Nitrofurantoin has this really cursed-looking hydrazine group, which is connected to this hydantoin group. A hydantoin group is often seen in chemistry in the context of N,N-dibromodimethylhydantoin, or chlorobromodimethylhydantoin, which is often used in spas or hot tubs. Nitrofurantoin also has a furan ring and a nitro group, hence this name is fairly apt. It's a nitrofurantoin, because it has a hydantoin, and there's a nitro and a furan. Once in the body, around 75% of nitrofurantoin is metabolized by the liver, with the remaining finding its way into your urine and reaching concentrations high enough to kill bacteria. Once within a bacterium, nitrofurantoin is decomposed by bacterial enzymes into a number of highly reactive intermediates. Said intermediates essentially attack the internal structures of a bacterium, leading to its rapid death. Nitrofurantoin has relatively few common side effects, namely headaches and nausea, and it also turns one's urine brown, although this is completely harmless. This is able to go and prevent a urinary tract infection even if you take it orally. I think that's pretty impressive. Now, 75% of it does get metabolized by the liver, so maybe that's pretty high, but overall, I think it's still okay. We'll put it into C tier, because you have to see the doctor, because you have an infection. Next, we have metronidazole. Metronidazole is a synthetic antibiotic and also an antiprotozoan. Metronidazole has an imidazole, hence the azole, and nidazole because it's a nitroimidazole. When metronidazole undergoes partial reduction, it releases the nitro group that you see here into the cell, which attacks and damages DNA in the form of a nitroso radical, leading to cell death. Said partial reduction occurs primarily in anaerobic bacteria and protozoans, leaving human cells, but also aerobic bacteria, largely unharmed. Metronidazole is used as a cream for treating various skin infections and as an oral medication for gum infections and dental abscesses. In terms of side effects, you have your usual nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, along with a lingering metallic taste in the mouth. In addition, there are some studies looking into metronidazole which have demonstrated potential carcinogenic and mutagenic effects. As such, it's an IARC Group 2B carcinogen, which means that it's possibly carcinogenic to humans. So metronidazole, you have some nasty side effects, and you might be a carcinogen, so for that reason, we're going to put you right into D tier. I'm pretty sure that they also use this one for fish tanks. This massive-looking molecule is azithromycin. Azithromycin is one of the most prominent and prescribed members of the macrolide class of antibiotics. A macrolide is this large cyclic lactone, which you often see in fragrances and some bioactive molecules. They tend to have these sugar motifs coming off, which is an amino sugar in the top case, and a regular sugar in the bottom case. The first macrolide discovered and utilized as an antibiotic was erythromycin, a natural compound produced by the bacteria Saccharopolyspora erythrae. Azithromycin here is based on the original erythromycin, it's just been modified in a couple positions to make it a more effective antibiotic. Azithromycin works by binding to the 50S ribosomal subunit, a component of ribosomes found in bacteria and other prokaryotes. This blocks the actual function of their ribosomes, preventing these bacteria from functioning and leading to their eventual death. Azithromycin is used to treat chest infections, along with various upper respiratory infections. In terms of side effects, it's the usual nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. So while this does have some side effects, this one's been optimized a little bit, and it also starts with an A, so why don't we put it into A tier? Clavulanic acid is interesting as it's not technically an antibiotic, but it helps in the function and efficacy of various beta-lactam antibiotics. We still have this beta-lactam, we have this like dihydroxazole ring, which has an exocyclic double bond, which is very atypical. There is some slight structural similarity to the penam ring, but instead of having the sulfur, we have an oxygen, and instead of having the two methyl groups, we have a different substitution pattern. Clavulanic acid is produced naturally by the bacterium Streptomyces clavilegaris and works by interfering with beta-lactamases in the bacteria. Beta-lactamases are enzymes found in bacteria that have evolved resistance to beta-lactam-based antibiotics, such as penicillins or cephalosporins. These beta-lactamases inactivate beta-lactam-based antibiotics, preventing them from actually functioning and killing the target bacteria. Clavulanic acid, however, permanently binds to the active site of these beta-lactamases, totally inactivating them, and thus allowing the actual beta-lactam antibiotics to do their job. Clavulanic acid is most often paired with amoxicillin, a penicillin-type antibiotic, and typically in the form of its potassium salt, potassium clavulanate. To that end, clavulanic acid mostly treats and has side effects of whatever antibiotic it's paired with, as on its own it has little effect on the body. So while this isn't technically an antibiotic, It is pretty awesome, so even though we're going to put it into F tier, you just have to remember that it's because it's not an antibiotic on its own. This one would not work without another antibiotic. As such, it's got to go into F tier. Vancomycin. Vancomycin is a type of glycopeptide antibiotic and a big boy. I'm not even sure where to start on this thing. There's so many rings. It's all cyclized. This is like a protein had a nightmare, and then there's suddenly random chlorinations on the ring. There is a lot going on to vancomycin. Vancomycin is produced primarily by the bacteria Hemicolatopsis orientalis and works by disrupting the construction of the bacterial cell wall. Bacterial cell walls are comprised of peptidoglycan subunits that covalently bond with each other to form a solid cell wall. Vancomycin interferes with the formation of these covalent bonds, leading to an improperly formed and faulty bacterial cell wall, and eventually, lysis. That means they die. Vancomycin is used primarily to treat methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA. This is essentially a staph infection with a high resistance to numerous antibiotics. Vancomycin has the usual nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea for side effects, but interestingly, it has its own condition associated with its use. Vancomycin flushing reaction, also known as red man syndrome, occurs when the drug is administered too rapidly, leading to the release of large amounts of histamine in the body, resulting in rash, redness, and discomfort throughout your body. So this one has some pretty harsh side effects, although it does have kind of a cool structure. It's a mycin, so why don't we put it into C tier? I mean, the effects are pretty bad too, so I think it's fair that we put vancomycin into C tier. This is ciprofloxacin. Ciprofloxacin is a fully synthetic antibiotic, hence the cyclopropane and the fluorine, and a member of the fluoroquinolone class. This is a quinolone, and it's 4 because it's in the 4 position rather than the 2 position. Almost all quinolone-based antibiotics that exist tend to be fluoroquinolones. Ciprofloxacin and other fluoroquinolones work by interfering with and inactivating bacterial DNA gyrases. This prevents proper cell division for bacteria, leading to the eventual dying off of a bacterial colony. Ciprofloxacin is used to treat a variety of infections, ranging from pneumonia to meningitis. The usual nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea are associated with ciprofloxacin use, along with tendinitis and tendon ruptures in elderly users. So I've never taken this one, so I won't be too harsh here. It starts with a C, it's going right into C tier. Another one starting with a C is clindamycin. Clindamycin is a type of lincosamide antibiotic and one of the most prominent and prescribed members of this class. Clindamycin has a pyrrolidine, as well as this amide linker to a thiosugar derivative. There's also an alpha-chloro next to this NH, which makes me a little bit concerned because chloroalkanes tend to alkylate stuff, which is something you usually don't want in your body. Lincosamide is a semi-synthetic antibiotic derived from lincomycin, a compound produced by the bacteria Streptomyces lincolnensis. Clindamycin and other lincosamides work in a manner similar to the macrolides discussed earlier. They inactivate the 50S subunit of bacterial ribosomes, preventing proper cellular function and leading to cell death. I wouldn't be surprised if this chloro group results in the alkylation of that subunit. And if you know anything about that, I'd be interested to hear it down in the comments. Clindamycin has a number of uses. It's useful in treating acne and other skin infections, can be used in lieu of penicillins if the patient is allergic to penicillins, and can be taken in conjunction with quinine to treat malaria, as sometimes taking multiple medications together can result in adverse effects that you want to avoid. Clindamycin has the usual antibiotic side effects, not too much else to add there. So this one can be used when people are allergic to penicillin. That's pretty based, so why don't we put it right into S tier? I mean, plus there's also an S tier, so I think that makes sense. But the chlorine is definitely a little bit sus. Doxycycline. Doxycycline is a semi-synthetic antibiotic from the class of tetracyclines. It's a tetracycline because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 rings. And there's a number of different functional groups decorating this ring, such as this phenol, this ketone, this dimethylamine, this amide, and a couple enols. Definitely a wild molecule, and a lot of interesting derivatives of these have been prepared. The namesake compound, tetracycline, is naturally synthesized by various species of genus Streptomyces, and doxycycline is produced by removing one hydroxyl group, then adding another one in a different location on the overall skeleton. Doxycycline works in a similar manner to the aforementioned macrolides and lincosamides, only instead of attaching to and deactivating the 50S subunit of bacterial ribosomes, it instead attaches to the 30S subunit. This prevents proper protein synthesis of the target bacteria, which inhibits bacterial colony growth and eventually kills the infection. Doxycycline is used to treat a wide variety of conditions and infections, and even has antiparasitic properties as well. Though doxycycline doesn't actively target parasites, there are numerous species of parasites that have developed mutualistic relationships with certain bacteria and need them for proper reproduction. So doxycycline is basically able to take out their friends, and that stops them from growing. Doxycycline has no major or noteworthy side effects, aside from the typical nausea and vomiting, along with headaches. So doxycycline seems pretty awesome. It also has not only antibacterial effects, but it has implicit antiparasitic activities as well. That's pretty awesome. Sulfamethoxazole. Sulfamethoxazole is a synthetic antibiotic and a sulfonamide. This is the sulfonamide group. Sulfonamides are a class of compounds that typically possess antibiotic properties. This is a derivative of aniline, and we also have this methyl isoxazole ring. Sulfamethoxazole is used to treat a wide variety of conditions, such as urinary, respiratory, and intestinal infections. Sulfamethoxazole works by disrupting the synthesis of folate, also known as vitamin B9, as it resembles and competes with the precursor compound para-aminobenzoic acid. By the way, you can buy this from bulk supplements, and it can be made into benzocaine, using ethanol. Folate is necessary for DNA synthesis, and since most bacteria produce their own folate, the disruption of this process prevents these bacteria from properly functioning. Sulfamethoxazole is safe in humans in part due to the fact that we don't produce vitamin B9 ourselves, meaning that the intended pharmacological effect can't happen in our bodies. Side effects nonetheless exist and are the usual nausea, vomiting, along with appetite loss. This doesn't even target people, so that's pretty awesome. For that reason, I think we're going to have to put it into S tier. Also, if you want some TC lore, my great-grandma was actually in the hospital for many months when she was quite young, as she had a leg infection, and this was before antibiotics were widely available. But eventually, antibiotics reached Western Canada, and she was able to get treated and made a full recovery. After this happened, she then gave birth to my grandma, and so if it weren't for sulfa drugs, I wouldn't be here. The only downside with sulfa drugs is people tend to get allergies to them, but I'm not sure if that's super common. I just know that they aren't typically prescribed right away anymore, but they are prescribed in specific instances. Saving my great-grandma's life, though, is pretty based, so that's going to have to go right into S tier. This structure reminds me of a compound I've seen before, but I can't quite remember which one it was. Trimethoprim is a fully synthetic antibiotic. It has this interesting 1,2,3-trimethoxybenzene motif, and it also has this pyrimidine ring. Trimethoprim treats many of the same conditions as sulfamethoxazole, and both compounds are frequently bundled together in the same medication. Similarly to sulfamethoxazole, trimethoprim works by interfering in bacterial DNA synthesis, in this case disrupting the synthesis of dihydrofolic acid to tetrahydrofolic acid. This is a vital step in producing the nucleoside thymidine, and its disruption prevents proper function and reproduction of bacteria. Unlike sulfamethoxazole, trimethoprim can interfere with proper thymidine synthesis in humans, but fortunately, its inhibitory effect on human synthesis is only about 1/60,000th of its effect in bacteria. Trimethoprim has the usual antibiotic side effects. You know them all at this point. So trimethoprim, pretty cool. A little bit of inhibition for human enzymes, so for that reason, we're going to put it into like A tier, but it's still pretty awesome. This is the last antibiotic that we're going to be talking about today. Streptomycin. Streptomycin is a natural antibiotic produced and isolated from Streptomyces griseus. We have a tetrahydrofuran ring here, which is sugar-derived. We have another sugar derivative here, but instead this is a 6-membered ring. These rings here remind me a little bit of inositol, probably because they're derived from that, but maybe not. This other one here kind of looks just like glucose, but it's an amino sugar instead of your typical sugar. In addition, we have these two guanidine groups. A little bit cursed. Streptomycin is the most prominent and prescribed aminoglycoside, a broad class of antibiotics targeting a broad variety of bacterial conditions. Streptomycin and other aminoglycosides work in a similar manner to tetracyclines, targeting the 30S subunit of bacterial ribosomes, and thus preventing protein synthesis in bacteria. Streptomycin itself is used in treating fairly serious conditions like tuberculosis, endocarditis, and the plague. Yes, that plague. Interestingly, streptomycin is often used as a natural pesticide as well, preventing blight and infections on various crops. In terms of side effects, aside from the usual nausea, headaches, and vomiting, streptomycin has been shown to be toxic to kidneys and ears, leading to kidney malfunction and deafness in severe cases. That's pretty bad. Bad starts with a B, and we haven't put anything in B tier yet, so we're going to put that into B tier, because you better be careful if you take that one. Antibiotics have saved lots of lives, and appropriately using them is an important way to make sure that they stay effective for future generations. If your doctor prescribes an antibiotic, make sure you take it to completion, because if you just take it for a couple days and you start feeling better, you'll wipe out a couple of the bad bacteria, but the ones that remain will be more resistant to the antibiotics that you're taking, and since you stop taking them, those ones can proliferate. So if you want to do your part to prevent antibiotic resistance, make sure you take the full course of antibiotics. That way, all of the bad bacteria get wiped out and your immune system's able to deal with the ones that are a little bit resistant, since they're not fending off against all the other ones. With that being said, antibiotics can be misused, and the overuse of antibiotics has led to some resistance in hospitals and other medical settings. Thanks for watching. If you like chemistry videos like this and you want to see more, you should probably hit that subscribe button. If you want to learn more about some unique antibiotics, my editor for this video recently made a video of his own, exploring just that, which
you should totally check out. Hey, I'm Siggy Snake. While working on and researching this video for TC, I learned a lot about early antibiotics and the interesting history surrounding them. I just put out a vid of my own looking at Gramacid S, one of the first antibiotics developed, along with the unusual scientific climate that led to its development in the Soviet Union. It's a really unique topic in my opinion, and something you should check out if you enjoyed this video.
Make sure you go and check out Siggy's video. I really like the work that he's been doing for this channel, as well as for his own. With that, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.